just change the names to describe it, because based on the location, certain things change based on where you are on the planet. Now, one of the moon deities that existed in Asia was called Sin, spelled C, which is the crescent moon, I, which is the candle, because the letter I is actually a candle, which represents illumination or light. That's why it has a dot on the top. So you have the C-I, the crescent moon, with a candlestick, so they call the moon Sin. So you have the Asian moon god that they call Sin. So eventually, Asia got into this act because the Habarus end up going up in those areas also. So now, all of a sudden, since we're no longer born under the sun, who are we going to be born under now? They said we're going to be born under Sin, the moon. So they said that the sun died for your sins, which is the Babylonian word for the moon god. So now this is where you get a term, you're born in sin. Sin is not people being born in sin, it's actually the moon. You're no longer born under the sun, you're now born under the age of the moon. And the moon deity was, as I said, was called Sin. So now from now on for the next 3,000 years, everybody is going to be born in sin. Now they're going to tell you that the sun died because, as I said, after September, the 7th month, November, September, October means 8 in Latin. So when you say October, you're actually saying the 8th month. November in Latin means 9. December is the 10th month. In the 10th month, the sun is at its lowest point, hence it died. Hence, we're going through that right as this very day. The sun is basically at its lowest point, the moon is at its highest point. Beginning today till March, the sun is going to begin to rise. So when the sun is at its lowest point, they said the sun died. And basically they said the sun died for all our sins. The sun now these same groups of people, all you have to do is study the decipher. You can't really read this stuff in books. You have to actually study the art, the sculptures, the inscriptions that was left behind. You see how they crafted their language. Now all of a sudden they have places called synagogues. You're like, why would they call it synagogue? Because their power is based on the moon, and the moon is called Sin in Babylonian. So you get a term that they use that they call them synagogues. But it wasn't just these groups of people. Every culture knew we were going into the Dark Ages. Now you have another group of people that came onto the scene, which were the Romans. When the Romans became privy of this moon information, knowing that the sun ages are ending and now it's beginning for the moon people to rule, they took on certain terms. As I said, all you do is trace the symbols, trace the words, and you see that everybody was privy to this. They took on the term C-Asar, C-Asar, which is the crescent moon, the C-Asar. So now they don't want to call themselves, they used to be ruled by generals and they were in different city-states. Now they brought themselves on the one ruler that they call the Caesar. So now the Roman Empire is using the crescent moon to be attached to the emperor to let you know that now we're in the age of the moon. Now you have a Caesar Roman Empire. Basically letting you know that this empire is ruled under the C or the crescent moon. Another group of people that eventually came in and used a C in their as their symbol was Islam. Islam basically knew we were going into the moon ages, so they took the crescent moon as their symbol. So basically, I'm just trying to show you how when you decipher what's left behind and you trace everything back, you realize that we transfer from one age to another age. So getting back to, as I said, they turned Osar into El. From now on, they want you to be scared. Why would people want to scare you? Because at nighttime is a time to scare people and read stories to them. At nighttime, you're going to be filled up with lots and lots of stories while you're in the Dark Ages. Lots of, somebody's going to be writing a lot of books, because Jehuti is the writers of books. So you're going to have lots and lots of little books to walk around with all of a sudden, because before then, nobody was walking around with books and quoting scriptures. But what they done is they started concocting stories basically to scare people away from themselves. So from now on, instead of people realizing that you're supposed to perfect your soul, they've created a figure that they said that when you die, you're going to go straight to hell. You're like, why? What's up with this hell? Because why they keep saying you're going to go down to hell? Because when you go back into the origin of the word, when they say you're going to hell, they took the term El, which is Osar, the Lord of the underworld, the Lord of resurrection, the Lord of fertility. When you look at Osar, he's sitting on a 90-degree angle. When you look in the alphabet, or the letters we use today, Osar's symbol is also the tekken, or what we call the obelisk, the symbol of resurrection, the symbol of fertility, the man's phallic. The man's phallic is associated with fertility. So now you get the term El. So when you die, they say you're going straight to El, which eventually became hell. So basically, every ancestor before then was waiting to go to meet Osar. But now somebody has made sure that's reversed, because in the Dark Ages, everything becomes backwards. Now, instead of you being glad to go to El, which is Osar, which is the other half of your soul, now somebody's made sure that you're scared to even leave, because now they've told you when you die, and guess what? The word die is a Latin, the Roman god, the Greek goddess, Diana, the moon goddess. You have Apollo, which is the sun, Apollo and Diana. Diana is the sister of the moon. So now the word Diana, the moon, eventually became the word die. So now the term die is being used in the word. So now when you pass on, they say you die. So they said when you die, which is referring to the Greek goddess Diana, they said you die and you're going to go straight to El, or hell. So now you have to see how they use terms that they know people eventually become ignorant of, because in the Dark Ages, you're in darkness. So they know that if you don't have a book to really understand this stuff, you're going to be very ignorant. During these periods, you're going to have more and more people that you can control through fear. So now you get the term die, it was referring to the moon. Why would they use the term die to associate it with the moon? Because now let's get back to the moon deity, the feminine aspect of the moon. The feminine aspect of the moon, as I said, through the Greek goddess Diana. The D, when you look at the letter D, matter of fact, all you have to do to see how it's being used today, the letter D is actually a half a moon. When you look at DreamWorks, go online and look at how DreamWorks, their logo comes out. It starts with a crescent moon and eventually becomes a D, and then you see the term DreamWorks. So the letter D, the symbol of D, is referring to a moon. So I broke down Sin, which is a moon. I broke down Yah, which is a baboon. Now that sounds good, right? Baboon, moon, but whatever. So I didn't realize that until I just said it just now. But I broke down Sin, C-I-N. Now you get the term Diana, D, half a moon. Why? Because the moon seems to die and resurrect every month. Every 28 days, it seems the moon is born on the right side. You see the crescent C. Then eventually it seems to become a half a moon. Then it becomes a full moon. Then it becomes another half a moon. Then it dies again. So you get the term, the moon seems to always come and goes like it dies and resurrects every 28 days. So now, because of that, they said everything dies and resurrects, dies. So they call the moon goddess Di. Or that's where, as a matter of fact, this is where Princess Diana got her name from. They named her from the moon goddess, Diana. Or they call her Diana Luciferia. Luce in Latin basically means light, because at nighttime in the darkness, the moon gives you light. So you get the term Diana Luciferia, she who bears the light, or the light bearer. Light, as let me break another spell, light bearer eventually came, they took out certain vowels, and you get the term liberty. They took lie and bearer and created the term liberty or liberty. This is why liberty or liberty, the light bearer, holds the light, as you know, in New York. Now, getting back to the moon again, so you get the term Diana. Going back to the Kemetic deity Herohet. Herohet, the feminine aspect of the moon, was basically associated with fertility. Now, Herohet was symbolized by a cow. Why would the ancestors choose a cow to symbolize the moon? Because if you look at a cow, its horns is shaped like a crescent. So they associated the cow's horns being associated now with the mother or the crescent moon. Now, one aspect of the moon that people have to understand is that the moon doesn't power itself. The moon actually gets its power from the sun. The moon traps light from the sun, hence the moon is now a storage house. Anytime you have something stored somewhere, it becomes a house. So now light lives on the object that we call the moon. So they call this deity, or the force behind that, Heru, which is light. Heru, the symbol for light. Het, which is the house. So you get the term Heru Het, that the Greeks eventually called Hathor, and which became Heteru, and some people call it that today. But really, you're supposed to say it in a proper term, because the T, as I said, is always at the end of the word. You don't put the T at the middle of the word. The T, like you have Aset, Nebhet, Sekmet. The T's are always at the end. So you put the Eheru first, which is light, then put the symbol of the house second. So you get the term Heru Het. So I want to put that it's not Het Heru. You say it Heru Het. Now it sounds more feminine when you say it like that. And so now you know why the moon is associated with storing light as well as the cow. Because now, as I said, the cow, if you look at Heru Het, she has the crescent horns, and guess what? The light or the sun sits in between her horns. So now you see why the ancestors put the sun in between the cow's horns, because they're saying that the sun or the power or the light sits within the woman or the moon. The cow symbolizes the woman with the sun in between her horns. So the sun or the power from the sun is sitting in the light, sitting in the lighthouse, or what today we call the White House. But I'll get into that a little later. Now, another aspect of the moon is, since the moon is associated with causing the tides on the planet, the tides are controlled by the Ya, or the moon. The moon, as I said, it takes energy from the sun and it regulates energy on the planet. So you get your tides. So now the moon is associated with pulling water. The moon pulls the water back and forth like a mother stirring the pot in the kitchen. That's what the answer is. This is how they used to break it down. They said the moon was like a mother who would stir the pot in the kitchen. Just like how you see a mother stirring the waters when she's cooking, they said the moon was on that same frequency, that it stirs the waters on the entire planet. So now the moon becomes associated with regulating the currents, or eventually what became the currency. Currency flows at the banks, so eventually you get the term currency and banks. Then you eventually get the term money, because the moon controls the currency, so now you got money. And that's where you get the term money from, or moneda. Basically, you've seen how words have been tricked, and if you don't study and realize what all this stuff goes back to, now you know why we don't use gold anymore, like in the golden days. Now we're using money because we were in the moon days. Now you understand why, when the Dark Ages began, everything was all about being monotheistic. Why? Because mono means moon. Theo in Greek means God. So monotheo is referring to the moon god. So now we are being ruled under the monotheistic or monotheo, the moon god religions. Only the moon people are going to thrive in these periods. The sun people are basically going to go through a little bit of hell until the sun rises again, because the sun is going to be dead for 3,000 years, while the moon, if you study the text of the ancestors preserved in stone, they said after Heru falls, Jehuti is going to take its place for 3,000 years. So coincidentally,
So real quick, brother. All right, that's interesting. Something just came to my mind. Now you said the moon people are going to rule during this age. Is that why, ever since we was real young, we have always heard the Jews are the chosen people, the Jehutis?
Exactly,
that's why they say that?
Because during the Dark Ages, the sun people are going to have to be in hibernation. Until then, the chosen people are the moon people, or Jehuti. Whoever wants to be...
Right.
Matter of fact, I'm glad you brought that up. Here we go. Another deity in Kemet that rules through the moon is a deity called Khonshu. Khonshu is the child of Amun and Mut. Amun is basically the creator, Mut is his other half, the consort. They need each other to exist. The forces need each other, yin and yang. And they have an offspring that the ancestors described, a force they described as Khonshu. Khonshu is the child of the moon. Khonshu is referring to the cycles of the moon, the power behind the moon. I'm summarizing it real quick. If you look at the deity Khonshu, he has certain aspects that's very curious. He's a child. First of all, you look at Khonshu, he's a child. So when you look at Khonshu, you're looking at a young child. You're not looking at a fully grown person. Another thing about the aspect of this deity of the moon is Khonshu is wrapped in linen. He's basically in a cocoon almost. basically so they